Control yourself. Don't drink too much. Don't talk too much. Don't look that way. Don't stare at that boy.
Welcome to Over It. It's Dr. Donna Gilman here, and I have the distinct honor of having my co-director of the Couples Center of the Pioneer Valley, my work wife, my beloved friend, Katherine Waddell, joining us on the podcast today. Welcome to Over It, Katherine.
Oh, I'm so excited to be on Over It.
Yay! Well, we have been friends now for probably close to, I've lost count, 20 years, something like that.
Probably 17 or 18 for sure.
Yeah. And we've been running this business for what seems like 50 years. I don't know.
Maybe 75.
Maybe 75 years. We often joke that we're going to write a book one day about why not to open up a couples counseling center, but it's really been an incredible journey. And in part today, we're going to talk about that journey of how this all came to be and sort of the challenges and great, joys and gifts of being in a business partnership with a close friend, which I think in and of itself is pretty miraculous. And we're also going to be weaving in some aspects of the work that we do and differentiation, and also talking about what it's like to run a business from sort of a place of heart-centered, sort of feminine energy, and just whatever else pops up.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, do you want to take the listeners back, way back in time to when
Oh my goodness.
you and I first had the harebrained idea that we should maybe go into business together?
Well, it's funny how memory works, right? Because my first memory of my connection with you at all was you and I were both, we were renting space in the same cute old Victorian building. And I first became aware of you. You were on the top floor, right? In the very top floor. And I think at that point, I was on the bottom floor. And I would see you running in and out a lot. And you were so cute, and you looked like this little elvish person who I just was so curious about. It's like, who is this adorable, amazing looking woman with a really short hair? And you had your flair and your sense of style. I was like, I want to know who that is. And over time, I put together that it was Dr. Donna Gilman. And then I think maybe our mutual friend, Ellen Sachs, who also had an office in that building, was telling me about you, or she mentioned who you were. So anyway, at some point, you and I just remember talking to you in the hall, and we chatted, and then we decided, let's go out to lunch. And then I remember sitting with you in, I think it was Zen restaurant at the time in downtown. This is so funny because I haven't even thought about any of this until just right now. These are just memories I have. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, oh my gosh, I usually can't stand other therapists. I just have an allergy to their personalities. Often, with some wonderful exceptions of some of our dear friends, but I just thought, oh my gosh, this woman is amazing. I want to be friends with her. And I think we talked a lot about spirituality interests. And I just got this feeling of you being this strong womanist person who had a very full life outside of just being a psychologist. And I was like, I want to be friends with her. And so we were.
Yes. Well, that's funny that you bring up that memory. I, of course, have no memory of that whatsoever. But I knew of you, obviously, because you were in the building, but also because you were really out there with your music career. You were a really prominent traveling musician with a very successful musical group. may I name drop the Lilies. And so you were known to me, and I thought, my gosh, how is this woman doing this? She has a private practice, and she also has a successful music career, and she's doing all of this. I guess the memory that stands out the most for me, well, there's two. One is you were running a group where you were doing an introductory course in the developmental model, which is obviously the model that we both work from and have devoted a center to. And you invited me to participate in that group, which was absolutely life-changing. It changed literally the course of my life. And well, I mean, that's a prominent memory right there. And my second most prominent memory is shortly thereafter, you and I going out to lunch and talking about what would, we were both really busy in our private practices, feeling like we had more business than we could handle. And what would it be like to maybe think about going into practice together and starting a group practice and having just this exploratory conversation about that. And the next thing, I woke up and we owned a couples counseling center. We had all these clinicians working for us, and I don't know what happened. But yeah, I mean,
I think there were a few steps in between there.
I think I dissociated. Something happened to me after that. Yeah. So that's what I remember. But, it really, meeting you, becoming friends with you, doing introductory training with you in the developmental model, it absolutely changed my entire life, right? Because you and I ended up getting married as work wives and starting this business and, just, growing our friendship now over 2 decades. And I mean, I think our story has got to be pretty unusual, because I remember people saying to me at the time, like, "Oh, don't go into business with a friend. That's a terrible idea. Don't do that. That's going to ruin your friendship." I mean, what do you remember about that time?
Well, what I remember about it is that because I'm thinking about this, how on a certain level, sometimes, I mean, this has changed and, this can go back and forth. But I think in the beginning, like, you were such a yes person and you were so full of ideas and like, we can do anything. And I think I was more a little bit in the conservative side of like, well, what would be the downsides? And I have to talk to my people and, blah, blah, blah. And I remember every single thing that I had concerns about, and this is where the differentiation started to come in, I think. I would bring questions or concerns to you, and you would have this really great, thoughtful way of acknowledging it, and then saying or doing things that made me completely trust that we were going to do this process in a thoughtful, slow way, where there was not going to be any big sort of like mistakes that we couldn't get out of. I mean, I remember distinctly having the conversation about, well, how are we going to split the money, or what, like, I'm not ready to like, open a bank account with you and, blah, blah, blah. This was like me being more conservative, and I still didn't know you that well. We were still new friends and I just adored you, but it was like, well, like, this could be a terrible idea. I don't think it's a terrible idea, but every time I brought questions or concerns to you, I just feel like it was met with such a sort of calm, thoughtful response and like financial smarts that I was like, okay, I don't have anything to worry about here. And plus, I think we did a really unique thing in the beginning where each of us hired an associate rather than we decided not to start actually a partnership, an LLC or anything. We kind of just took it in steps. We each hired somebody, and then we just decided, well, let's just pool the money from both of them and split it, not split hairs about, well, your person worked 2 hours more than my person this week, or, that kind of thing. And I think both of us being really open to that and just not getting into splitting hairs and keeping vision ahead and just saying, well, let's see how it goes. And if we don't like it in 6 months or a year or something, it's like we just won't continue forward. But quite the opposite happened. And I think so there was this building slow trust. And I always tell my couples when they come in with trust issues or this or that, but my definition of trust is experience over time. There's no like substitute for that. You can't just trust somebody. It's
Right.
something that's built over time. And I learned really early on that you were really trustworthy.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I mean, the definition of trust, I think about it as trust is like a million little trust falls, right? It's a million little, if I lean back, will you catch me? And
Mhm.
right, that absolutely builds over time. And you mentioned the concept of differentiation. And for folks who are listening who might not be, familiar with the term differentiation, it's an excellent time for us to sort of define that. I mean, do you want to go ahead and define that?
Sure. I mean, I think about differentiation as a sort of a two-part process. It's my ability or your ability to go inside and get really, really clear. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And what do I want? And then to be able to, in a congruent, sort of calm, grounded way, to talk about that, about my own thoughts, feelings, wishes, desires with another person who's close to me. And it becomes increasingly difficult and important to be able to do it as the stakes get higher, of course, around big decisions or let's say you and I have a massive difference about what we want. Our differentiation capacities allow us to both get clear with ourselves and the other person, and then also listen really thoughtfully without interrupting or shutting down to the other person and consider their position. And I just think about it as all the elements of being a great team. So I think that, I mean, that's how sort of I would define it. And then going back to what you said about, it's not even just, what you were saying about trust is like a whole bunch of trust falls, but also even more important sometimes is, will I kind of will I actually define when I know it might be something that you don't want to hear? Will I still self-define? Will I protect myself in ways that are really important? And will the other person do the same so that we're holding on to our integrity, each of us, in the face of sort of a high intensity situation where the other person, there's just pressure, like, think what I think, want what I want, feel what I feel, and where you don't.
Right. And ability to, and a capacity to lean in and navigate and negotiate the differences that exist between
Mhm.
us, as you say, without either of us losing the core of who we are, moving out of alignment with boundaries, values that we hold, standards of behavior. And I think, one thing I've really honored about our journey as friends and business partners is we've actually practiced what we've preached to the best of our ability through the years in terms of, doing our darndest to hold on to ourselves when we don't see eye to eye, and still showing nurturing concern and curiosity and compassion for the other person. And that can be a very anxiety producing process over time when we're talking about the risks of managing a business, the risks of managing the intimacy in our friendship. I mean, so many levels and
Mhm.
layers that I think that we've really done a pretty great job overall of managing through the years by applying really the main tenets of the developmental model and differentiation to our relationship. I can think of so many times where we've used one of the major interventions from the model, the initiator inquirer process, and we've sat down and actually held ourselves accountable to a structure when we have something that we really need to negotiate that we're gridlocked around, or we just really see very differently, and we're both very passionate about our perspectives. And I think we've been really, really dedicated to doing that.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, and it's interesting too, because I also think, aside from differentiation, one of the other things that's really defined how we've handled things, and you've been really good about this. I mean, I've brought it too, but I think I mean, this is one of the things I loved about you from the moment I met you, which is bringing in an aspect of spirituality, and in particular, that sort of divine feminine. And when we have big decisions to make, it's not just the logical, analytical, kind of male model. How are we going to do this? It's also bringing in a wider perspective and bringing in spirituality into the picture of what we're going to create. We often meet once a year, usually in the fall, to talk about what do we want to manifest this next year, and also just to reconnect with each other, and that spirituality being part of that. And I just love that.
Thank you for acknowledging that. I mean, I think that is such an important part of our friendship and our business relationship, is how to not leave our intuition at the door when it comes to how we run this business, and really trying to cultivate sort of the sacred feminine energy within us and between us, and really try to create a team that is heart-based, that is that the word love can be used in the workplace in a way that's respectful and boundaried, and is sort of an energy that I think both of us try to embody with the folks that work with us. I think that does set this apart, and I think the people that work with us can feel it. But I also would say it's been such a journey. I'll say for myself, there have been times, especially in the early years of running the business, where you're trying to be successful, you're trying to grow something. And I felt at times like, the go, 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 the masculine kind of energy of push, 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 push yourself past, your exhaustion level, push yourself past, was very much a part of my experience. And I would kind of come in and out of that energy of recognizing, oh my gosh, we're working ourselves to the bone in a way that doesn't feel abundant. It doesn't feel congruent. It doesn't feel sustainable, or one or the other of us saying, we got to stop, we got to slow down, and then getting caught back up in that energy of, well, this is what it takes to grow a business. You're supposed to be overworking and doing all of these, sort of marketing and mentorship programs where it's all about taking it to the next level, but then feeling like a corn husk, like a depleted corn husk at the end of the day, right? I mean, I think it's taken several iterations, and when neither of us went to business school, right? We don't have business backgrounds. And so you think about, like, we're therapists who have, slowly and thoughtfully and messily at times grown a business. But for me, it's been coming in and out of that masculine and feminine energy until I could really find my sweet spot, really in the last couple of years, of like, oh, this is what it feels like to work in a way that is sustainable, that's in line with my values, that doesn't take me into overwhelm and depletion. Like, it's been a journey.
Absolutely. And I think, so many business owners, or people, not even just business owners, but people who are really devoted to their careers, will relate to that, because as women, we are trained and groomed our whole lives, I think, to be caring for and about other people. And even though it may look like on the outside, oh man, she's got it all going on. She's a business owner. She has a family. She, all of this kind of stuff. And for a lot of women, I think there's that just underneath the surface, just like that cornhusk syndrome that you're talking about, of just that exhaustion. And and it's interesting too, because there's been a difference between you and me from the point of view of that I don't have kids. I have stepkids who were older when I got together with my husband. And so, and you have Avi, of course, and that's been a huge amount of, your love and energy and focus and dedication. And, that's just a difference we've had to negotiate. And like you said, ideally and hopefully and in different ways that have included love and care and concern and friendship, and keeping that first and foremost. Sometimes, when it just, it's like, first and foremost, we're humans here to support and care for each other.
Right. Yeah, like we're always friends. And at the same time, there are core differences obviously that exist between us, almost as if, if we were a couple, right? I mean, there are just some core differences in, as our lifestyles, our life choices, our personalities. I mean, I think that there is a core difference that has remained perhaps and we're a great balance, I think, for one another, in that I do still tend to be the one who's like, hey, I've got this great idea. Let's da 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 da. And you're like, okay, like let's think about the process around this and the procedure around this. And have we thought about this? And have we thought about that? There's a nice counterbalance there.
Over It is proudly sponsored by the Couples Center of the Pioneer Valley, offering specialized services to couples and individuals with relationship issues and concerns. Check them out on the web at pioneervalleycouplestherapy.com or call them at 413-570-0067.
Our needs have been different at times through the years. And on a personal level, we've each gone through so much life and life change, and you've outlasted my husband. Like I had a husband when we started this whole thing, and I don't anymore. And just so much, like so much. I mean, when you think about the challenges that we faced in terms of differentiation, in terms of having to hold on to ourselves and lean in and continue to be willing to negotiate things. I mean, through the years, are there any examples that jump out for you that felt particularly tricky or challenging? Or
Well, I mean, I think there have been various different times, but I think like one of the most profound ones was really recent, which was a year ago in July, when I broke my ankle in 3 places, which was just a catastrophic injury with really catastrophic kinds of uh, results in my life, including my not being able to work a bunch and then trying to go back to work the way I had normally. And, you were both so personally supportive and understanding, and also just sort of ready to dive in and do what was needed. And it was a massive shakeup of what our roles had been previously. And, you were referring, I think, in one of your other podcasts, maybe when you were talking to Claire, about the difference between, swimming against the river versus how can you find a place where you're really just swimming with the stream. And I think there was also a way in which our roles really shifted then, in a way, if there had been more fighting, that it could have been catastrophic. And it so wasn't, because there were some pieces of how we decided to shift our roles, or how life decided that for us, and how that actually was a really good direction in a lot of ways for both of us, because you were actually feeling a great interest and desire to be more involved in the day-to-day of the business and really making bigger decisions about a variety of different things that were sort of needing to that needed attention and decision making. We were sort of coming out of COVID at that point, and then our business had changed so much during COVID, and then trying to define, okay, what is this next era going to look like? And you just have taken on a massive amount of leadership, time, energy, effort. We shifted and changed lots of different aspects of of what our roles were. And, not only have I felt so super supported by just, your your essence and your friendship and your concern and care for me, but also your honesty with yourself and with me. And I think just about, hey, this is an opportunity. Can we see it as an opportunity? Is this an opportunity for some of what I was wanting and you were wanting to actually really change and shift? And I think, one of the things I love is that even hard conversations with you, I feel like for the most part, they always go well. They
Mm.
go well, even if they don't get resolved right away. I think because we give them time and patience and bring that bigger perspective. And I think each of us doesn't let go of if there's something that's really bugging us or something that we just, doesn't feel resolved. We keep coming back to it, but we also give it some air and light and space to kind of get more clarity about it. I don't think we tend to make big, quick decisions, which is, I think, a really good thing about our partnership.
Well, I've definitely had to grow my capacity to manage my sense of urgency, right? And manage whatever anxieties I might be feeling about how, when, if we're going to
Mhm.
be able to figure something out. And I think that that is something also that I've had to flex like a lot of emotional muscle in terms of my partnership with my partner as well, so the things, the skills that I've had to grow and flex in my relationship with you, I'm having to do that in my other intimate relationships as well. So our relationship has been a great classroom and a training ground for me to have to build that muscle. And yeah, the last couple of years have been obviously for all of us with COVID, but with our business, we went from having a brick and mortar building where everybody was seeing clients in person to being in the throes of COVID, where it wasn't safe to be in person and having to take an entire business online, which I can't even believe we pivoted and did and created. Like how do you do that? How do you take all these clinicians and clients without having these protocols in place and have a successful online presence and how the heck we did that, but we did that. And then in the past year with your accident, which was, yeah, it was horrible. And 2 weeks, I think, maybe 3 weeks after your accident, my partner, my other partner in life, had a catastrophic accident that almost ended his life. And he had a very long recovery process. So the two people that I really rely on the most in my life, really you and my romantic partner, were actually both down and out and struggling and suffering at the same time. And yeah, it was, and then my mother had a stroke, I think 2 weeks after that. So it was it was a hell of a year. But I think what has been the ongoing challenge and great gift of my relationship with you is I have to keep taking risks in being honest about what's coming up for me. And that's scary. It is scary because you don't know how things are going to land. I mean, I trust that you'll always be thoughtful, but it is scary, and especially as it came to the unfolding of things changing in our roles in the business. I mean, we really were entering into unknown territory where we had always sort of had this egalitarian, like 50-50 approach to everything. And in some ways it was great, and in some ways it meant sometimes we were tripping all over each other. But that shifted dramatically, and it shifted, and we had to keep coming back to the negotiation table and kind of talking about what the heck is going on and what are we going to do. And there was a long time where you were in so much physical pain, it was all you could do just to get through a day. So I mean, I just honestly, I feel really proud of each of us that we continue to hang in there and come back to that table and be willing to speak our truth and talk about the parts that are conflicted within us as well, which is a big part of differentiation. It's not always black or white, what I'm thinking or feeling. It's so nuanced. There's so much gray. I have these internal conflicts and dilemmas, and being willing to share those as well is such a big part of intimacy.
Well, absolutely. And, I think we're still in a definitely ongoing process around this because it's still like in the arc of the business, this last year and 3 months or whatever it's been since my accident. So much has changed in terms of shifts in our role, and that's still unfolding. And I know we will continue to have lots more conversations about, it's like for me, it's this question of also where I'm at in my life. I'm about to turn 56, and I'm what, 5 years older than you.
You're 5 years old.
And yeah, and it's like that realization of, oh my gosh, where I'm going in my life at this age, and also as somebody who's had to really navigate disability this last year, and like feeling such triumph from really small things sometimes of being able to go up a set of stairs or not come down a set of stairs and feel like I've just injured myself and stuff like that. It's like all of all of the things that really make you rethink, okay, I can't do life the way I used to do life, or the way I used to do life is now really, that door is closed on a certain level, but what are the doors that are opening, and how much of that do I want to put back into the business? How much of it is something that doesn't really have anything to do with the business? What's my work life balance? How and when and what ways do I rededicate myself to my music, which is one of the big things on my table right now as a songwriter and a singer, and somebody who is, um, you know, working hard to keep that one of the important burners on the burner of my stove in life. And now that I'm much better, you know what do I bring to the business? What do I bring to my music? What do I bring to my friendships now that I'm sort of out of crisis? So it's all been an interesting thing. And I just want to take the opportunity to say, you know, your the way you showed up, which is the way that you do show up in life, I think, which is pushing yourself. Really, you have a really high standard that you hold yourself to about how you want to be. And like you were saying, I think that your capacity to walk the talk around differentiation is just sometimes just mind blowing to me. You're such an inspiration for me, and the way you live your life in that way, and how you allow yourself to be vulnerable and to embrace your vulnerability. I think it's just it's extraordinary, and it's a big inspiration in my life.
I deeply appreciate that. And, there have been times I can remember one in particular, and I won't go into the details, but I remember I was carrying a lot of shame around something I had done and asking to talk to you. This was back when we were still in person in the center, and asked you to come into my office. And I was so scared to share something with you. And you were so generous and gracious about it. And this was something that I was holding deep shame around, and I had been trying to talk myself into having this conversation with you for some time, and you could not have been more gracious towards me, and you showed me so much compassion. It was such a healing moment for me. It really went so far as to help me to heal something within myself. I'll never ever forget that. So right back at you, right back at you. And I know that, look, there's also been times that, we've each been, I'll take ownership of this. There's been times I've been really overreactive. I've been, yeah, I've been really messy. I haven't been able at times to hold on to myself. There have been things that have gone on in my own life that have in the past really created an anxiety in me and a fear of lack financially. And, you know, that's the reality, right? I mean, we are people and things get messy. And at times there's been tension between us. That's real too. I mean, that's just right.
For sure. I mean, there's no way you're going to have the kind of intimacy and interdependence, financial interdependence, the kind of emotional interdependence that we've allowed ourselves to have as friends, I think, too. You know, I mean, there's just no way you're going to have that without sometimes a big time tension. And but I'll just come back to saying you have an extraordinary ability to self-reflect, to when you feel out of alignment with who you want to be. I feel like you just so often, you just very quickly kind of, you'll write me an email, or you'll call me up and we'll have a conversation. And I feel like, okay, we're getting back on track. We haven't figured all of this out. There's plenty of things to figure out, but like, you know, cleaning up the mess.
Yeah, with vulnerability, right?
Yeah,
After a flare, if one of us flares, I think we each try to bring that vulnerability back to the fore. It really
yeah.
helps to understand like what's
Well,
underneath the
I'll just go
reactivity.
on record as saying I think you're better at it than I am.
Really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I think I get this from my dad. Like, there's a certain kind of like bullish stubbornness that I somehow over, you
Yeah,
know. You've
that's
seen
true.
that.
Yeah, I know. You talk about like your dad and his need to be right. I mean, that does come through sometimes, but you know, I think at the same time,
Well,
I
I guess what I want to say is it's so much. I mean, it's like I have that, but I also, you make it by your vulnerability and your being so the opposite of that. I think you make it really easy. You inspire me to be a better person. I
oh
have my moments, but you inspire me to be a better person
no.
when, you know, when those kinds of things happen, I think.
Well, I really deeply appreciate that. And I think that one of the things that I think neither of us has done, and I think it's a really important piece for people who are in any kind of partnership, romantic or business or otherwise, to hear, is that we stay out of assigning malintent toward the other. You know, I never assign malintent to your actions, behaviors, or reactions. You know, I really believe in your essential goodness, and I try to, even if I can't do it in the moment, to come back to a place of curiosity about, well, what does this symbolize for you? And, you know, what is your reactivity about, as well as my own? You know, why am I so reactive here? What's really getting triggered for me? What does this issue symbolize? You know, trying to get up under it to really understand, how is it a story about me? You know, and how can I be more vulnerable about that story with you, even if in the moment I've bungled it or been overreactive or flared, or, you
Right.
know.
And I think what part of what I'm saying is that level. I mean, I think it's just a very rare for someone to have that level of ability to self-reflect and to hold yourself accountable to that, and to want to, not just because it's like, well, I should do this, but because this is who you are. I feel like you're constantly evolving, you're constantly challenging yourself to be more genuine, and to be more real, and to be more honest with yourself.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think that the key thing here is, if we're going to run a center that's based on the pieces of
Right.
differentiation, I mean, I think we have to walk the walk, you know. I mean, what would have happened if you and I had imploded? I mean, you know, like if you and I had like essentially divorced from one another, I mean, you know, I think that the ability to cultivate a peaceful, pretty workable work environment for the people that work with us is stemming from, you know, our relationship and our ability to walk the walk and really to model that and embody that as much as we can. Um, I mean, that's been really important to me. Otherwise, I'd feel like a big imposter.
If you're enjoying Over It, make sure you follow us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or Apple Music.
Imposter syndrome that, I think is
Mm.
relatable for many people. I mean, I will just say that for me, there's been a real arc of development around that for me, feeling like we started a business and we sort of made it up as we went. I mean, obviously we received consultation in various forms, but nobody really teaches you how to create a group practice, how to run a business when you've never run one before. I mean, there's a big difference even between being in private practice and learning the ins and outs of that, and then creating a group practice. It's a huge leap. And I think that, and then being people's boss, like that was a huge arc of like, what, right? I'll never forget. I ran into, this was years and years ago, one of the people that works for us, who's been with us since the word go, Chris. And we ran into each other in public, and he was with his wife. And later on, he said something to me about it. He said to his wife, like, oh, that's the first time you're meeting my boss. And I thought to myself, I'm somebody's boss? What? I had not internalized that, and then I also think that there was a piece when I was going through my divorce of a little bit of like, so am I some kind of imposter in terms of, here I am, I'm a couples therapist, I co-own a couples counseling center, and I'm divorcing. And if this was happening to somebody else, I wouldn't judge them. I would totally understand that you can be a really strong clinician and you can still end up divorcing. But there was a little bit of that imposter syndrome that came up for me then, in terms of, oh my gosh, I'm divorcing. And yet, what are the optics on this? But really, it was me judging me. So I'm wondering for you, are there any elements of that idea of imposter syndrome that have been alive for you through the years?
You know, it's interesting because I think the place I felt it the most was when you and I, the first year we were together in a mentorship group and in a business mentorship group. And I think being in a group where there's some other folks who were pretty high powered, and then later years, I continued in that group, and yet you had other fish to fry. You were doing other things. Um, but I would feel that way there for sure. And it's interesting because as much as we learned a lot of things from that, I actually think that for the most part, you and I have done a really good job of taking in information um, and crafting something that feels like it has integrity to us. And it might not have been done on the, what's the word? Um, might not have been done according to the structure of, business model expertise would say that you have to do this, and this. Yet here we are, both of us still loving what we do in different ways, 11 or 12 years out or whatever it is. And um, with our relationship, our friendship intact. And that's something to be incredibly proud of because I think, as we know, so many businesses fail after the, year one, year two, year five. And I just think, for me, the feeling of, I have always known had the capacity to be and become and gotten a lot of help from wonderful mentors over the years, as I know you have, becoming an excellent clinician. And that's one of the things I respect about you the most is you're just an unbelievably amazing clinician. And I think I'm at the point in my career where I'm pretty darn good at the things that I do and love to do also. So I haven't had a lot of imposter stuff around that, but I think more around the business. But when I look back on it, I actually think that you and I have been much better at improvising what was going to work for us ultimately, and knowing that we did not want to be those crazy people who worked 60, 70 hours a week and just going completely nuts, and building something that didn't feel like it actually was in integrity, in terms of you and I both strive always for work-life balance. Sometimes we're there, sometimes we're not, but it's always that journey that we're on, and being in integrity. And so, when I look back on it, some of the things that I might have felt like an imposter about knowing how to run a business, I actually kind of like our story.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that, right? Because there was a time we were paying to be part of a mentorship group to help people grow their businesses. And there was definitely this model of like, this is how you should be doing it, and these are the right things to do. There was a lot of wisdom in all of that. But I think for us, it's always been coming back to like, but who are we and who are we not? And some of the people
Right. Who are we not?
admire, yeah, and who are we not? I mean, it's just as important of a
Yeah.
question, like, who are we not? There's a lot of people we admire professionally in our field, have deep admiration for, but we do not strive to replicate their lives or their lifestyles or their business models, but it's taken a long time to ferret that out. And I think something that we keep coming back to is, we live in the same tiny little town, and I can walk to your house or ride my bike to your house, and you
Which
know
is just the most awesome thing ever. We're
just
so
the most
lucky.
awesome thing ever. And even in the earlier years, we used to get together on Tuesdays religiously, I think, and we'd go for our walk and we'd do our big picture visioning, and then we do all the minutia of the crap we had to do because we didn't have a lot of administrative help. And but really the awareness that like this feels abundant. I mean, how many people can take a random Tuesday, and even though we're working and we're working together, like we can take a walk and we can, sit in the garden
Yeah.
and work, and the
Linger over
recognition,
lunch.
linger over
Yeah.
lunch, the recognition that for each of us, oh, this feels like success, right? This feels abundant, being able to take a breath, being able to take a breath together, that becomes part of our definition of what is success based on our own standards, right? Is having some breathing room in our lives.
Mhm.
And it is a journey of discovery of sort of like, right, so what does it take to sustain and grow a business but not lose yourself in the process? And there were times I felt like I had lost myself in the process, that I just felt like I was on a treadmill, and that didn't feel abundant ultimately. It felt like a lot of shoulds and have tos, and then how do we realign with what our vision really is for success? And I think that there's been ultimately a lot of overlap in our visions for what success looks like individually and collectively. And I think that's another key piece of what's allowed our partnership to work. And I think is a great model for all partnerships, is sort of like, let's keep checking in about our individual visions for this relationship and this business, and make sure there's enough, overlap in those visions, and the places where we don't overlap, what needs to be negotiated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sometimes think about what another one of the keys maybe to our success is that I think you and I have a lot of core values that are really in alignment.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, what do you see as some of your core values? And I guess my core values as well, because I think this values-based conversation is so useful. And I think it's so useful for anybody in any kind of partnership. And we throw away around these terms like values and boundaries, but like what are your core values?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think some of the things that have stayed, I mean, some of the values are different now probably than they were 11 or 12 years ago, and probably for you too. But I think there's some things that have stayed. And I think one of the values in the business is a really rock solid one, which is you and I both believe deeply in the power of differentiation, the power of the developmental model, and the importance of training the next generation of couples therapists and giving people excellent training, support, and supervision to learn to be excellent couples therapists, because the world needs that so badly. And that the tools and skills that comes through the developmental model of couples therapy and the differentiation based work is just absolutely critical, in a world where so much of the information that we're getting is divisive. And this is really the opposite.
Yes.
And so I think there's just this core thing there about the belief in that and the power of it. And then that infusing our friendship and our business partnership. And also, I think, I think for certain, both you and I have had a vested interest, and we want to make some money at this too. And that's been a really key thing, because we're not just doing it for fun. There's the idea here was we want to create a really sustainable business that both nourishes the people that work there, including us, and gives people an alternative to just working at agencies where they're making practically the equivalent of minimum wage for younger therapists, or people not even younger, but just people who sometimes don't know their worth or their value, or they know it but they can't figure it. They don't have either the desire or the tools or skills to do private practice and make more money, but just providing an alternative for people and creating a community and a sustainable community of connections where people can learn from each other, and where we're over to the side and some of the power is in the group of people. That's what I'm always going for.
Yeah, that's really well articulated. And I'm also thinking about, I guess, also a hallmark of all relationships, and I really wish they taught this stuff in grammar school, but that disillusionment is absolutely unavoidable in intimate relationships. And in fact, it's an opportunity for deeper growth and development. And I'm just thinking about applying that, to our experience, both interpersonally, that there has to have been disillusionment about how I've handled something or how you've handled something, but also disillusionment in the process of trying to create a sustainable business. I mean, we have long joked that this is like getting rich the extremely slow way. Like, it's just a very arduous process of, there's not a huge profit margin in this business, and that we've stayed committed to it nonetheless. But just thinking also about that concept of disillusionment and the disillusionment we faced between us, and also in terms of trying to create and run a sustainable business over the years.
Right. And each time we felt like we were about to achieve a certain marker, something else would happen.
Absolutely. Like, for anybody who runs a business, it really is like a whack-a-mole experience. You hire someone, you lose someone, something shifts within the industry, managed care to something screwy, there's a pandemic, there's, I mean, trends change, the economy shifts. I mean, it's always something. And the ability to be adaptable and keep coming back to one another and kind of ride these waves, it's very much like any other relationship.
Yeah. And I have to say that, when I think back, I sometimes like to think, like, what would I have told my younger self, or what would I have told our younger selves if you and I were sitting here now talking to those people who were out to lunch talking about, hey, what do you think about the idea of maybe joining forces and hiring some people and blah, blah, blah. I think sometimes think about, like, what would we tell them? And I think, what you were just talking about is, well, if you want to do this, it'll be an amazing journey. And there's going to be a lot of patience and need for just inner strength and fortitude and ability to shift and change and let go of things and so many different things. And it's not going to be at all like you think it is.
It's not going to be at all like you think it is. I mean, I'm just thinking about, like, we always joke that we're married. You're my work wife, but like, it's the kind of advice probably we should be giving people before they venture into marriage, which is like, you're about to enter the Olympic training ground and it's going to be harder than you could ever imagine. And there is the potential for you to grow and stretch beyond your wildest dreams. And it's going to take everything you have, really, to continue to make the choice to lean in when it's hard to do so, and be vulnerable when it seems impossible to do so, when it feels counterintuitive to do so. And you're going to grow in ways you could have never imagined. And I think that's what I think about, our 12 or however many 13 years of partnership. I have grown so much through our partnership, equally as much as I did through my marriage. I mean, it was like the same ways that I was challenged, really, in my marriage. I was challenged in our relationship. Was I going to collapse? Was I going to steamroll you? Was I going to, how did I know when it was time to stand up and take a stand? And when was it time to be willing to negotiate, and how to figure that out? When am I compromising versus compromising myself? How do I know I'm being treated fairly? How do I know I'm treating you fairly? Where does my responsibility to you begin and end? Where does my responsibility to myself begin and end? I mean, our relationship has been such a classroom for me, and a place for me to practice differentiating, and to ultimately feel again and again like you are a safe place to practice. You are someone who, I think, at the end of the day, no matter what happens with the business, you'll always be my friend. And
you bet.
That's everything, right? Everything else can fade away, and I know you're my friend, which is a tremendous gift.
It is a tremendous gift. And I I think that I do think that when we're little old ladies, we will be laughing about this. Remember when we had that couple center together? I mean, hopefully CCPV will still be going on in some form, but by the time we're in our 80s or something,
hopefully we'll have passed the torch.
I don't plan to be running it. I don't know about you.
Hopefully we'll have passed the torch. Yes, it will be. We'll be reminiscing by then.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, thank you so much for all of these years of sustained friendship and effort and stretch that, you've shared with me. And, and thank you for being on Over It. And I guess, just in the vein of the podcast, Katherine, at this point in your life as a woman, what are some things you're just over?
Oh, wow. I'm over saying yes when I should either be saying no or maybe or probably not. I think that's just a huge one. And that includes within myself, not just with other people. I think one of the things I'm really over is overworking, or not working smart. Because don't get me wrong, I actually really like to work hard. I mean, this about me. I like to work hard. And I also, I think, my injury this last year has taught me that I am at a different stage in my life than I was. And I am overworking. I think I'm also over trying to live up to somebody else's idea of what our center should be, or what it should look like, or how we should be doing things.
Yes.
I think I am over. I think I'm over putting off on a daily basis, really taking lots of time to enjoy the moments. We live in such a beautiful place. Every season here is really beautiful. Life is really beautiful. There are beautiful moments every day. You know, I often think about the Thich Nhat Hanh sort of meditation. There's a lovely meditation that when I'm just like losing it, I often will just stop and sit for a couple minutes and just repeating the phrases. Breathing in, I know I am in the present moment, and breathing out, I know this is a beautiful moment, because almost always it is. And so I'm over losing perspective on that. And
Yes.
giving myself the gift of morning, afternoon time, evening time to just sort of be with that. I'm over rushing. I'm really over rushing.
Yeah.
And I'm over trying to pack too much into my life. And I would also say that as a woman, I am like, I'm really over giving men, especially white men, passes, or like, I mean, that's a whole nother topic and conversation, but that's definitely something I'm over. I've been over that for a long time though.
Mhm. Yep. Well, I again just want to join you in supporting you in these things that you're over. And thank you again for being on here today. And for anyone who would like to learn more about the concepts that we've discussed today in terms of differentiation, the developmental model, please feel free to check us out on the web at the Couples Center of the Pioneer Valley. And I also want to thank our listeners today. And if you're enjoying the podcast, to be sure to like, follow, and share. Katherine, doggy do, I love you so much. And I look forward to many, many, many more years together of laughter and a few tears and just walking this part of life together.
Me too.
Take care.
The April in your soul, tears falling like the raindrops through the sound, colors, reflection in your eyes. The April in your heart, blossoms of the flowers of all kinds. I love them all, I love them all. Spring is in your love, spring is in your eyes, spring is in your heart, I want to live in. And the April of your soul, dark clouds of the winter. Soul, tears falling like the raindrops through the sound, colors, reflection in your eyes. The April in your heart, blossoms of the flowers of all kinds. I love them all.